Okay, just a couple of words about the film. Not. I think the best is to watch the film, obviously. But the film was trying to follow the artist in Cailleacha, and the interest part in the film was to get the atmosphere, the idea of coming together, age, obviously, but also the process of each artist. And I think the film is capturing this very well. And really, it was a long, winding project because of lockdown, and it had some difficulties in terms to bring the film together. But I think you will enjoy it, or I hope you enjoy the film. Just look at it, and then afterwards, I think we can discuss whatever each process you will see throughout the film and the atmosphere and why we made the film, really.
The Cailleacha came about because Helen Comfort had this thought that she would like on her 75th birthday, in her 75th birthday year, to gather together a group of women artists and take us all, not take us, organise for us all to go to a residency in Cyprus that she knew. But because of the COVID problem, we didn't go to Cyprus, we came instead to Ballinglen. But otherwise, our mission remained the same. It was to assemble 8 women artists, the figure 8 representing the figure for woman, and that all of us would be over 70, and that we would come to a place together, as it happens, Ballinglen, and that we would think about making art and aging and how our processes have changed, how our collective 500 odd years of experience making art has, how that has settled now that we are the age we are, and what we think about the future.
I'm just sitting here in among the debris, detritus of all the stuff I bring. I'm like a bag lady. Everything comes with me in case I need. And this diary is actually from the beginnings of it are from 2005 all the way through. Seldom used, but going back to when I remember things that I have to look at, and I just was working with sheets again, and I came across these from 2007 with the knots and the sheet knots, and I just don't know why I left it so quickly. You leave things, when you do a piece of work and then you move on.
My work ethic has continued as a kind of sense of vocation, I suppose.
Yes.
But I find as I get older, my energy goes. And I find it sad.
Yes,
Yes.
that it can't. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I found though that with children and being restricted in the time I could spend in the studio, that sometimes I invested too much emphasis on the doing and,
Yes.
and
I know
sort
that
of
feeling.
must get
Yes.
on and so on.
Yes.
And so I finally sort of got rid of that, and I'm quite content to be in the studio and sort of accomplish ostensibly very little, but lots
Yes.
happening in
There is something about
Yeah.
being in the studio. I think
yes.
people have almost a favourite habitat, and I think the studio is mine.
Absolutely, me too.
Once you have this idea, I mean, I often have that struggle,
Yeah.
that I have an idea and I have a kind of vision of it, but I can't work with that idea in my head.
Yeah.
I have to forget it.
Well, I often have to make and make and make to get
Yeah.
rid of it, so that it has to be worked through rather than not worked in my head, but
Yeah.
but worked through, and then my head has to say stop.
Yeah, kind of open yourself up, or, you know, make yourself in a way vulnerable that what's in you, so comes out in the work, or...
Yes, yes,
I'm just saying,
yes,
because when you were
yes.
talking
I-
about
I would just hope that when somebody looks at that work, that they're not thinking, but that maybe something is happening, you know, viscerally.
yeah. Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, that
Yeah.
it, and I suppose the word moves is an interesting one, isn't it? Or, you know, breathtaking is, because when something really works, it does take your breath away, doesn't it? You know,
You
it's
stop for a minute, yeah.
you
yeah,
do, you really
yeah.
do. It's visceral, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's what I'm attempting.
yeah, no, I'm totally with you.
That's good.
Yeah.
We didn't manage to get 8 women artists. We had 2 other people in turn who, for different reasons, had to opt out. So we ended up actually slightly changing our rule and going for an artist who is a bit younger than the rest of us and who is a musician. So we have 7 people involved in the visual arts and 1 musician, a composer and jazz musician called Carol Nelson. And actually that completed the process beautifully for all of us, because we wanted somebody who would animate the group in a different way that maybe another visual artist might have done. We had thought about having a performance artist on board, but Carol fulfills that function in some ways, as well as bringing sound and music very prominently into the group.
You see, when I come up here, I put the headphones on, and I noodle around, and I start with nothing, and then I go, oh, that feels... And so I'm just following my instincts, really, and the influence of being here, both in terms of being with really inspiring artists around me and also being in this environment, it's quite elusive for me to describe. So it might just be one thing that somebody said about, I can remember Barbara yesterday said, when do you know how to stop? And she said, when there's no energy left in it for me. And that's exactly how I feel. But to have someone say that in a way that I hadn't articulated to myself, does that make sense? So that, and I know other times I've just picked up small ideas that have just fed in to what I'm doing here.
I suppose at the outset I was very nervous about what I might do, because I think there was an expectation coming from some of the artists that I would reveal myself to have been some kind of an artist all along. That hasn't happened, because I think, and I do make art actually, and this is something I haven't really said to anybody else up to now, I do make art at home a bit, but here it was more about a real need to observe a collective working together, and how that collective, how all of us, including myself, in the collective, but I see myself also as a bit of an observer all the time, how we all interacted with each other in all kinds of ways, all of it very supportive, none of it competitive, and I was surprised and pleased about that, and everybody just being really willing to learn from everybody else around them, the open-mindedness of the whole group, I would say at all times has been astonishing.
So you can ink up your plate,
Okay.
and you can do, for instance, just.
With more ink on it, or just as it is?
As it is, yeah. This is all about do something, see, do something, and look. Yeah.
That's lovely.
So I just walked in to see the three of you at work, and see you, Gerda, up on your chair in your bare feet, going like, I don't know, Pilgrim's Progress across a huge sheet of paper with a very small pen, or I don't know, it's a brush or a pen, I haven't looked at what you were using, but with a very small point and a very thin line to cover such a big space. And then right next to you is Helen making, filling a metre square canvas with wax and black pigment. And then next to that again is Maria making your lovely little gem-like little small scale paintings using the weirdest of implements. It is like you go from, it's a bit like the witches actually, we're all called the witches, don't you think? So you get, have you looked at Maria's little tools with their pointy, their points to make them into pens, but they are gnarled, wild bits of hawthorn bush nearly. And then your cauldron there bubbling away, and you in your bare feet.
I want to make a series of fragments of human skin, aging skin, and I wanted to not compare them, but juxtapose them with images of like the skin of the earth. So it would be, working here in Ballin again, images of the rock surfaces of the coastland. But because everything is so varied, I wanted to find a way of dividing this film up into sections. And so then I thought of the idea that each section would begin with a portrait of one of the other artists here, and that portrait would come up very fast and then slowly disappear into the details of the skin, etc. And the sound, because I've recorded them speaking, would actually start again with their voice, but very quickly it would then just fade into the wind. And that image of the face fading would be the beginning of each chapter. You can see here, this is the one for Gerda, but all these images are fused together, the different sounds, and so that's what it looks like on the programme. I haven't got quite finished for Gerda yet.
And it's not like riding a bicycle. You have to start at the very beginning again.
The documentary, why this happened was really when we spoke first maybe to Helen about creating this group of women artists to go away with each other. The first instant I felt about it is, well, having 8 women artists, but you have to do something about that, you know. You can't just let it go like this. So I felt that was very interesting to see, could we document the process of and the idea of why we are coming together. When I look at the documentary now and I go to Helen or I go to Gerda, I want to show how that art, like Gerda's piece of drum, is developing. And so with the jazz musicians as well, I'm interested in that relationship, how the work has progressed over those 4 weeks. And in one way I feel this is a collaboration between me, the camera, and the person who is the artist who is creating artwork, and that's the difference. I'm looking at the process because I'm an artist, obviously, and it gives me an easier way to understand maybe the artist's work. On the other hand, it gives me an insight. I was amazed how little, I thought I know the person, but how little I know about it when I started to follow the process of the work of that artist. And I started to feel I got more knowledge of it, and it's quite an emotional thing. I find it quite emotionally to follow this artist's work and to represent the work, and you want to represent it the best way of possible, and that's the difference with when I do a piece of art with Patricia. It comes from a different source, it comes from a different mindset.
How are you finding working together in this space? Doing such different things?
It's quite different to work with other people there, but there is some, like we're of similar minds. We all want to create something while we're here. So there's this beautiful silence that we all get absorbed in our own work. And occasionally we have a tiny chat, but nobody disturbs each other.
Okay.
So it makes it more intense, I feel, in a very nice way to work here.
And you're not used to working in shared studios, any one of the three of you, are you?
No.
So how are you finding that?
No, lovely, no problem at all. No, it's lovely to hear sort of somebody scratching in the distance, and now Helen, making strong strokes the other side of the partition from me. And yes, it's a very uplifting, because you know, you get into your own little comfort zone, and it's lovely to just be.
Sure.
And to be doing,
Sure.
which is really great.
Sorry, it's a bit like I once did meditation sessions with a lot of other people, and it seemed that the meditation was much more possible and easier to get into when you had 20 people or whatever, all attempting to do the same thing. And I think it's a bit like that.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you're putting it there. Yeah, I've done that as well, and it really feels like the meditation is almost stronger. You get to that place much quicker or something, because there is this common thought, or there's something in the air which helps you that way, because the other people are similar mind.
Okay, so it's like a vibe between the three of you that you pick up, because no two of you had ever worked together before, had you?
No.
Okay, and this is not collaborative work, it's just three people working alongside each other in a separate space.
One artist came in today, our jazz musician, Carol, and she sat while I painted her hands, and she said, "Oh God, I'd love to have a go at that." So I have this amazing table here with amazing colours, and she had never seen anything like it. She said she paints at home with small little tubes or watercolours, and she was dying to get her hands into this, and she did an amazing piece of work of me. She did the best painting of me.
Yeah.
I'm doing some that I like, people I wouldn't know that well, that I only met now. I find it easier to do their faces because you're registering just what you see. But you've somebody like Helen, who's a big life with me, and a big life of behind her of painting, and you know, there's a whole history to her that you'd want to try and get in. This is impossible what I'm saying, because I'm never going to be able to do that. But it's I'm trying to reach for the stars.
Yeah.
I love their faces, and I love their old faces, and it's a landscape in a way. There's as many crags in our face as rocks, and I'm lonely at home in Ballybrit in Offaly. Yeah, Silver Barn. There's only the two of us, and I go to my studio, and it is lonely. And I often do self-portraits because I'm there. I love working with people, so it's a great excuse to. They're lovely to me. They don't mind. They come and they sit and we chat.
Yeah.
It'd be nice.
Might. But the thing is, Bob, this project is finished.
They're telling me your portrait is finished. My portrait. I was going to have you in to put your glasses on.
No, I'm trying this one.
You're the one.
I was supposed to be a collaborator, sort of kind of cold. I
actually did. Don't know what I did the other day. I pushed these things on all of you. You know, these things. Yeah, because I thought it's a pro.
I just gave it a moment.
So I suppose it would be lovely if we could start by asking you to tell us a bit about the foundation, the background to it, the history of this place, which is wonderful.
Okay. Well, Ballyglen was founded in 1992 by two Americans, Margot Dolan and Peter Maxwell. They had galleries in New York and Philadelphia at the time in the early 80s. And they came to Ballycastle on holidays and just fell in love. They loved the landscape, they loved the people, and for them, they just went back each time crying all the way to Shannon. So during the downturn in the 80s, they closed their gallery in Philadelphia and just thought, what have we always wanted to do? And their plan was to develop an art award for artists, an art residency program, and they said Ballycastle is the place we want to be.
Maria was the one who, when we started this project off, sent us all an email and said, bring Wellington boots, bring a high-vis jacket and bring a torch. So, you know, we knew we weren't in for an easy ride, actually.
I'm looking to the sky, which I find dominates this area very much. As it is such an ever-changing sea, and with wind as a factor, I come and paint with small boards and get the essence of the painting down. Then this can be brought back to the studio and worked up into, say, a size 30 by 35 or similar size.
From a woman's perspective, you know, to say we're important, we're visible, we're innovators, we're supporting each other now more than ever. I think what you're doing is a remarkable contribution, not just in terms of the production of art, but in terms of, you know, the importance of senior wisdom in our society. So thank you for
Thanks, dear.
what you're doing. Thank you.
I think also collaboration between us is happening.
Yeah.
And we're much more likely to sit down and listen to each other's woes and
And
we
put
don't
away
have to
out
rush away.
collectively, yeah.
You know, and then we've this talk after dinner every evening. We sit and we go through them. We were talking about friendships last night, and it was really powerful, wasn't it?
It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
We tend
I think
to...
we're going to do sexuality next.
we all come We set ourselves different topics.
One workshop on that.
One of the events, we are going to go with 4 sort of afternoon sessions here in the museum.
Yeah.
And the dates we have for them, but what I didn't do yet, we've noted who will do what.
Okay.
And we've noted dates where we have to match the dates to the two people who will
things.
do.
Yeah.
And we'll do that in the next
Okay.
half hour or so. So Tuesday the 15th we do one. Thursday the 17th.
Yeah.
Tuesday the 22nd.
Okay.
And Thursday.
When I realised Carla was coming, I got these reams of this newspaper, which is throwaway. It doesn't matter. So whatever you do doesn't matter. It's the doing of it that counts. And I think I got excited about it because I used to teach a lot of blank drawing, and I found that 1-minute poses were brilliant. People forgot to criticise themselves.
A woman was refused entry because her décolletage was way too low. So she wasn't allowed entry. So there was an action, and the latest photograph, I think there's 5 women, and they are all standing in front of a nude in the Musée d'Orsay.
Oh, yeah,
and they all dropped their pants, they're all mooning.
well, the daunting thing is to leave the group or to go. No, I love to go home. Don't. But the warmth and the whole experience here was so fantastic. To be with people, all creative people who. Many of them go through the same processes I'm going through, and the insecurity and the whole way of thinking, even the outcome of the work is quite different. We all work quite differently, but the process itself seemed to often be very similar.
Yeah.
And also the insecurity we all have, and there is something that we all want to be together.
Yeah.
And the warmth, and that in itself gives us strength. And even the discussions, because at the time I thought, God, I want to work instead of the discussion or something. But I think these discussions are very important, and all the different experiences beside the work itself, but connected with the work. I think it helps to deepen your understanding of your own work.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the big thing from here as well, that I feel.
So you're really kind of, you feel influenced by
Yeah, very
all
much.
that
Influenced and inspired.
Thank you to Mayo Arts Office for actually all the support you've given us. We've had a great time in County Mayo. We're having a ball out in Ballinglen, but also the moment that I wrote to Katrina and said we were going to be in Mayo for a month, and was there anything we could do that might be, you know, of use to the Arts Centre. Both Katrina and Aoife O'Keefe came back to us with just so much, so many ideas, and such a suggestion that they were on our side, that got us really launched before we arrived out of our cars in Ballinglen at all. So we're really grateful for that. Can't say enough about it. And then, of course, the landscape of Ballinglen and the community all around North Mayo has been a great inspiration for us all.
I think I'm the only one that came into this project not knowing any of the other women involved. So for me, I think the most important thing that I'm taking away from this is the friendships that I've made and the certainty that there's something created here that will continue and flourish. That's the most important thing. Besides that, there's the composition that I've done, that it's still kind of, I think, a bit of a mystery to people, because it's really only when I get home, go into rehearsal and then go into recording that it becomes something that people can hear, as I hope it anyway. So, but the friendship, I'll go back to that really.
Helen, do you want to add anything?
I'm afraid I'm going to be very boring and say the same thing. Just the support and love, and I think that, you know, we're all very positive, but there is a process of aging that we all have to look at, and I think being in the company of all of us of slightly different ages is great, that we have been drawing strength from each other, and, you know, look into the future with more confidence, maybe.
One of the things that I'm very pleased about, and I think we all are, about that is how we very quickly trusted each other enough to speak out very openly about things like, you know, intimacy, and how we find that at over 70 or whatever age we happen to be, or, you know, whether we fear the next stage of our lives, or what, as I said already, what strategies we might draw on to help us to feel really positive about it, despite the limitations of various health conditions. And we talked about friendship and loss. And we talked about friendship in particular because, you know, when you get over 70, a lot of your friends begin to die off and there are fewer of them. And is it possible to make new friends over 70? Well, actually, this month proved without a shadow of a doubt that it is, and they are important friendships. They're not just passing things. We have something serious going between us all now, which will stay with us. Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much for your film. It's important to say that Terry's film was the first interpretation of us all as a group by anybody, and it was completely solo project for Terry, although she was recording all the rest of us, but it's very much her interpretation of us. And now we all have a chance to talk a little bit more about our experience at Ballinglen. Six of us are here this afternoon. Two couldn't come. Carol Nelson is recording a new album as we speak, so she couldn't be here, and Barbara Freeman is stuck far away in Belfast and couldn't get here. But the other six of us are here. We're going to have a discussion now among ourselves, chaired by Maeve Lambert. So just to say a few words about Maeve. Maeve Lambert is one of those truly inspirational figures in terms of inclusive practice, mainly in the theatre in her case. But I've been personally blown away by achievements that Maeve has been centrally involved in over recent years, such as a wonderful project that she was involved in about, I don't forget how many years ago now, about 7 or 8 years ago, I reckon, called Meet Me at Bridge Street, in which she and a couple of other people drew out the stories of people who had lived in a single street in a single small town in Ireland, Callan in County Kilkenny, and really completely gave new life to their memories and to the street, which has not left the street since then. It'll be forever associated with it. And she went on more recently, again in collaboration with other people, to spearhead a project, a theatre project that embraced the whole town of Callan, its hinterland, and all of the people who paid to attend, so that everybody was involved in what I reckon, although I really don't have the theatre history behind me to know whether I'm talking through my hat or not, I think it probably was the single biggest community theatre project in Ireland. I was telling somebody in Italy about it recently, and I likened it to a sort of cross between the Royal Theatre in London and the Oberammergau, religious pageant that happens every 10 years in Germany. Meet Me at, the big chapel in Callan was a life-changing experience for everybody who got to be a part of it, and that meant everybody who saw it as well as the people who rehearsed it. On top of all that, of course, Maeve's special project is directing and running a theatre company in Callan called Equinox, which is even more about inclusivity, if that's possible, than the other two projects that I've mentioned in more detail. So when I say truly inspiration, I really mean it. I've always been interested in collaborative art practice all my life, and I thought, that it was a dream of mine, but Maeve Lambert's only half my age, maybe less. Haven't ever asked her. But I learn from her every time I see the work that she does in Callan. So we're really delighted this afternoon that she could come as a younger person to look at us and chair a talk between us. Sum us up at the end, maybe. Thanks, Maeve.
Wow, I've no idea how I'm supposed to live up to that introduction. Thank you so much. God, and it's really humbling to hear because I'm completely in awe of all of you. And I'm really I was incredibly flattered to be asked, and I don't think I speak just for myself with that you are a bunch of women who have all your lives been kind of pioneering and paving the way and allowing people like me, young women, to be artists in Ireland in a way that is probably a lot more comfortable than it may have been for you. And I and everybody else owes you all a huge debt of gratitude. So that introduction was just extraordinary, and thank you. I have pages of notes from watching the beautiful documentary by Terry Rudin here, and I'm just going to quickly take a moment to introduce everybody. So on my right here, I've got Maria, I've got Patricia, and I've got Terry. And on my left, I've got Helen, who, full disclosure, is my mother, and Catherine and Gerda. So I just want to open up. I'm not sure who might want to take this question, but following up from what Catherine was saying there, I'm really interested, as someone who has to work collectively and collaboratively, for you who all work very individually and independently to have found each other in this way, like how do you, or I suppose it's really interesting that you still need to find your way to others. And I'm wondering, do you think that Cailleacha could have happened in your 40s?
Wow. Yes and no. It certainly couldn't have happened. No, it couldn't have happened in our 40s because we wouldn't have had, I think, we wouldn't have had the confidence. I think one of the things that you gain a bit as you get older, and I hope this is right for everybody, is you gain some kind of self-knowledge and also a bit of confidence or confidence is the wrong word. You gain a sort of knowledge that other people's opinion matters less and less with every decade that passes. So instead of trying to somehow meet other people's needs from you all the time, by the time you get to 70, you say, stuff that. I'm going to do what I believe in and what I want to do. And what we found then was that a bunch of us all felt that freedom a little bit. So we came together not having to compete with each other at all, but to be able to work alongside of each other, not even agree with each other. I mean, one of the things we did have that Terry very kindly didn't highlight in this is we had some disagreements, over dinner in the evenings. That's really where that happened. It didn't get in the way of the practice, though. If anything, it might have informed the practice. So I think we couldn't have done this in our 40s. It took a bit of that aging and a bit of that, we don't care anymore, let's just go for the friendship and the mutual support, which we do need and which we certainly got out of this project. So I've hogged that answer so far. I'd love to hear what the others would like to say about it.
Well, on top of what you're saying, I think I wouldn't have had the time, and I don't suppose any of us would have. We were raising families, we were earning money, we were exhibiting, we were very, very busy.
We were way down, you're right.
Yeah.
That kind of it seems to have been a recurring theme as well in what you were talking about in the documentary, Terry, is the idea of time. And there was a kind of I suppose a contradiction is the wrong word, but this kind of balance between the idea of patience and taking time and an impatience to get things done. Whether you want to speak to that.
I think it was quite a slow beginning, actually, looking back. And had obviously an idea what I want to do, but it wasn't really structured either. I wanted to leave it as free as possible because I didn't know what's going to happen, really, basically. And looking back on it and starting off the first week to film the different approaches of the different artists, it was slow. There was this kind of more apprehensive to answer what and why we are here. But I think as time moved on, obviously, yes, there became a much more kind of collaboration in terms of talking, and it became freer. And for me, it was more and more interesting to film and see the process. And I felt that was really my collaboration with the artist was so important. The understanding of how they work and how they progress the work and what the kind of identity is behind the work. And I hope that within the camera I was able to capture that as we went on throughout Ballinclen. And later on, even I went to visit all those studios, and there's enormous stuff there and work there and understanding of there. I was knowing Ballinclen is the most important element for making that particular documentary or film, because that's when we connected. That's when we started to get to know each other. And although we know each other, but we not in a more personal way as we did in Ballinclen. And I think the most astonishing part is that we fitted so well together. I hope that the film is showing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe this is a question for you, Patricia, or maybe both of you, this idea of making work kind of responding to and with people that you know both really well and not at all. And how was that kind of journey of having to respond to friends in this massive history and then these strangers, and how that jigsaw puzzle fit together?
Yeah, I'll answer that. Yeah, it was, well, she was absent. You know, she was absent most of the time. And I had wanted her to appear in it. And there were one time she said to me, we have to go back to Ballinclen because we need some outtakes, because she realised there was some of the shots of the sea wasn't in it and the sky wasn't in it. So we had 2 lovely days. We went back and stayed there for 2 days. And my role was to take photographs of her filming. So she was going to, so I was delighted to do that. And I took some really good shots. And I'm only saying this because I'm married to the most ego-less person in the world. She doesn't appear once. And all my work was for nothing. But I have to say that it's something that I'm in awe of, you know, that she leaves herself out of the equation. And even when it's coming to questions and answers. So it wasn't, to answer your question about the living together, it wasn't always easy. And I don't know I actually know quite a lot. I know a lot of artists say artists shouldn't be married to an artist because there's definitely bound. I know a lot of my friends had crashes, and but I think with 2 women, there's kind of there's a more understanding, or we actually are able to spot the raw places and try and put a bit of ointment onto it before it gets too bad. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's a great buzz.
Brilliant. I just want to, before we move over to my left, I'm going to focus on the right for a minute. But Maria, I just want to pick up a conversation that we were having earlier, and really, and it was around kind of, you were talking a little bit about your childhood and that person that somehow, looking back to how you were as a child and your relationship with horses and how you saw light and how your relationship with nature and how you're kind of still that child is still present within the artist you are today. Don't know if you want to speak about that, because
Yes, now we've talked about it, I've thought about it a bit more, and I think all that stuff from my childhood is carried into me now, and it's like a back catalogue of reference, you know, and I remember so vividly changes in light and things, and as a tiny child being so aware of it, and I am always looking at skies and the light and the shadows and, you know, the fields and the landscape, and it is who I am, actually. I am the land, really, and that's why this is what I choose to paint, because it is like maybe another arm or something, part of my body. I never settled in anywhere urban for more than a week or two. I had to get back to feed off green and big skies and the weather and the light.
and that's been a constant through your life and through your work.
Absolutely constant through my life, yeah, completely, yes. But I was very fortunate, you see, I always lived on farms and within the land and within the landscape. And I also had very visually aware parents, and parents who were very concerned about the arts and very involved in the arts. So we were very well educated within the arts by our parents, you know, on reading and people and writers and artists and painters and, you know, all parts of the arts. My father was Italian, and so they were very involved in Italian opera, and so we would always be brought to all the best opera when they had the season in Dublin, and so we saw some of the greats, even the young Pavarotti, you know. And then they would all be invited home for an enormous pasta dinner in our house. And so, yes, and I'd be kept home from school to meet somebody who was interesting. My mother would say, you should stay home today because so-and-so is coming to lunch. And so it was very privileged, and I appreciate it so much. And I talk to my own children and grandchildren about it, and hopefully they will enjoy that kind of thing too.
So going to bring a kind of similar question into somebody who also takes landscape hugely into their work, and draw your eyes to the wall behind Gerda here. But Gerda, do you think your childhood had an impact on your on your drawing now?
It does, actually. It's not so much my childhood itself as was the environment I grew up in, the reclaimed land, the polder, which is, as you probably know, 6 meters below sea level. So I was saying now, I was born under the bog, because you first had bogland, and then you had the lakes, and then it was drained, and that's the land we lived on. And below a dike, like the boats, the river was much higher than the house. And what inspires me, or what influenced my drawings, is, especially the last years, actually more than years ago, is the grid, the layout of the polders, the straight lines, because I always could see the horizon. There's always a distance, like, I thought the world ended there. I didn't know there were more people living behind the line I could see, but there were actually. But it's all very organized. We're very spatially aware, probably because it's a man-made environment, most of it, or the design is man-made. I mean, and because it's a very overpopulated country, we have to be very organized with space. And that comes through. But that is
yeah, the polder itself is influenced my work. And of course, many Dutch artists like Mondrian, you can see the layout, you know, you can see, and there's Schoonhoven, there's various artists who have this minimalistic approach to landscape. So in my landscape in general, it's not the depiction of the landscape, but the feel of the landscape, or what I would experience or of the landscape.
Yeah. I'm always interested as an artist about, you know, how your life kind of informs your work and where that comes in. How does that work? And I'm particularly interested in, as somebody who doesn't get a chance to work so deeply personally, where that line lies in your studio. So, you know, that idea that was coming up in the film, that idea of making yourself vulnerable in the studio. And I'm wondering, I don't know who'd like to take this up, but how do you, I imagine that in the world that you as artists, as women, have been occupying over your life, that you had a great many challenges and a great many things to pioneer. And I want to know how you, as artists, make yourself vulnerable in the studio when you have to be hard in the world and come up against, you know, misogyny and all of these fights that, you know, in a pre-divorce world, in a you know, how does that happen? Where do you get to that place?
I'll answer that as well, just for free. I was thinking of it actually the other day, of all the changes in my life. We are now together. This show happened, the film has happened, our residencies have happened. Whereas before this, I would be filling out bloody forms to apply for a show, to be judged amongst other people and getting refusals, and knowing your work was as good as others, but you'd still get the refusal, so it would make you wonder why. So we just, you don't get inured to it. It's kind of nearly masochistic that we know we may not, we go in for the big shot, knowing you're going to fail, like a golfer, like a bad golfer or something. So it's been hard and tough, and maybe it does toughen us up, but yeah, I certainly find life a lot easier now, and I'm less hurt by refusal as well. Like I'm able to say, well, that's their opinion, you know.
You're enfolded by Cailleacha.
Yeah, so
I'm astounded by the pace that you've been operating at, because Cailleacha has been an idea for 18 months? And then suddenly it came into being. Helen, do you want to talk about that? How did that happen?
Well, we knew each other.
Yeah, well, we did, and I think, you know, collective is a great thing, where it sort of grew organically. Every time we met or had a conversation, sometimes it grew. It grew out of an idea to be together. To people are now calling it a movement, and that's interesting. You know, that by our activity, something has come into being, and that's empowering somehow.
But to go from an idea that you had, and then but not just to, you know, not just have the idea, pull everybody together, and then, but no, you're exhibiting
like
that.
More,
yeah.
It was one person talked to another, and that person talked to another. We approached a few people, and they couldn't or wouldn't.
Or had stopped making art. A lot of people our age stopped making art, a lot of women in particular. And so they had stopped making art. And they were,
and one woman artist in particular said, not for me, just she works, but she was not interested in in gathering with other women. She simply wasn't. So it was sort of an interest. It has been a journey. That's the best way of describing it.
Do you feel like you're in a hurry?
We have very little time. I mean, we don't have a great deal of time. But so I actually who was it said it? One of you said it. Or you said it about another artist. About Francis Bacon, was it?
Oh, I said it.
Yeah, the mirroring. I totally agree with that. I still think, Gerda said it too, that maybe I have something really good inside me that I have to get out before I die.
Yeah.
And I think we all feel that going to the studio, that maybe today.
And I think also our group is a creative process in itself, isn't it, Cailleacha?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have to go with the process, we have to listen to that and go with that.
And we also plan collaboration.
Yeah.
Catherine will say a bit about that, but we're very excited this time because we're going back on a kind of a different task. And it's going to be more reflective. And we've only 2 weeks, so we couldn't do much anyway in our studio in 2 weeks.
It'll be in a hurry then.
Yeah, there'll be more. But so it's very exciting to do something we're not sure that's going to work.
Excellent. Catherine, do you want to tell us a bit about the latest adventure?
Well, I suppose we started off, I'm intrigued by the fact that I think Carol and myself were the only two who don't make visual art. We are, in fact, we know we are. So when we arrived in Ballinglen, all the others arrived with a certain amount of materials and stuff they knew they were going to do, even if they didn't actually do it, but they had a fallback plan at least. And Carol brought her keyboard, but she didn't know how she was going to fit in with the group. And I didn't know what I was going to do, not to mention how I'd fit in with the group, except for after dinner conversations, something I was keen on, and setting topics that we would all address together. But apart from that, I really hadn't the faintest idea. And in no time at all, and this was almost accidental, we decided to make a portfolio of prints. Not some of us, again, and hands up, had never made a print in our lives before. Not only that, in my own case, I was really worried about how I could produce a visual image, because a print is a visual image before it's anything else. And somehow, that's where the collective carried us. It carried the likes of Carol and myself, so that we actually did the things that the rest of you were doing. And of course, not all of you are normally printmakers anyway. So that was one thing. And then, where we go from here, of course, is that Patricia had been thinking of making rag dolls that had something to do with her own life experience and identity when we went on the last residency. But she got totally diverted by everybody else when she was there, didn't get to make the dolls. But the more we talked about it, the more it seemed like the right thing for everybody to do the next time. So we go back to Ballinglen, we are all going to make life-size dolls that are some kind of alter egos for ourselves, or aspirational figures that we like to see ourselves in some way, or more biographical images of ourselves. We don't know yet. At least I don't know until I start what I'm going to do. I don't know if the rest of you have ideas.
I have an idea.
You have an idea?
Yes.
Good for you. Well, there you go. And then we have an idea that we have proposed to the Arts Council, which might get booted down and which we are not disclosing, but we have an idea that we are all hugely excited about, that we'd like to start to plan after Ballinglen as our next big project. So yeah, we are jumping ahead a bit, and I suppose that brings a bit of a pace to it as we go. So yeah.
Amazing. And so that brings me on to, I guess, my next question. Is this one of the positive side effects of aging? Moving quickly, getting the stuff done? Are there any other?
Yeah, I think that moving quickly was sort of interesting, that the amount of interest the country has about us has generated an awful lot of interest, and offers really have come in. We've 2 more shows this year, and we have 2 more lined up for next year, and plus the project, hopefully, that Catherine is not talking about.
But also, Helen, actually, there's a relevant thing here, which is that when we started off, I don't think we had as much energy as we have now. We actually came away buzzing with ideas, and when your mind is on fire, you start to find the physical energy to match it, So I don't know, would that be true for everybody?
Oh, absolutely. I work longer days, and I'm far so much engaged, but also it's many things are challenging. I mean, to have so many emails and so many WhatsApp messages, etc. I find that quite hard to take at times. It's very, I'm just not a very thorough person to do that, but at the same time, it makes your brain working, and you just feel I want to cope with that.
So the Helen, for instance, who didn't say a word, didn't respond enthusiastically and say, yes, I feel more energetic. Yes, Helen is the very one who, since we came back, has completed a roll of 19 metre by metre square paintings that are might be the best thing you've ever done, Helen,
Yes,
so.
yes, there is that too.
Exactly, and Terry's done her film, which had, the film was 35 minutes, but we know that there were about 80 hours of footage there that had to be culled into 35 minutes, and so on and so on. You can't hold Patricia back because she's the ideas. She is the sort of well of ideas for everybody in this group. And then Maria.
Not to mention 10 portraits of each of us
done
underneath all the ones she's already done.
That's right. Yeah, so there is it's the energy, I think, is the thing that surprises us.
It's the collaborative momentum, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. If you're working on your own, you really wouldn't have that extra charge of energy that you get working with a group of other like-minded people, and I find it really energizing and challenging, and which is good. We all need to be challenged.
And often problematic.
I think it's a point that's been made a number of times, but it can't be said too often that as we get older and less energy, that I certainly, and I know others have voiced this, that what energy we have is spent in the studio. And so we don't have that sort of time or energy to go to openings and be part of the wider community. Somehow that diminishes. And so to have this group that we don't have to sort of go and hold a glass of wine to an opening and have chit chat, and which I don't think any of us would be bothered with anymore. At least I'm not.
But the collaborative, sorry for cutting across, but the collaborative has given us a kind of safety net for all that. We do our socialising. We have a Zoom meeting every Sunday just to keep up to date with each other, and so we talk fairly seriously, or we talk playfully, whatever way we want to, but as distinct from the more superficial glass of wine at an opening contacts that we would otherwise have. But we're forgetting, or not forgetting, we haven't talked at all about COVID and the effect of COVID on the whole of Irish society, national, global society in the past year. For us, actually, COVID maybe gave us a chance to get on with what we wanted to do, and yet have the fallback of our safety net of each other. The person who maybe has been least able to take advantage of that was Barbara, who's in Belfast and wasn't able to cross the border. And by the way, I don't think Barbara would mind if we said she's also the oldest of us all. She is the person with the youngest practice, of course, paradoxically. Yes. So, maybe some of you would like to talk a bit about Barbara's practice for a minute. Just, I think we should, since she's not here.
Yeah, I think, for me, I think it's super exciting because Barbara, of course, is embracing the digital technology. I just think that's amazing. Brilliant.
She's actually inspiring me. I'm going to have to sit with her and ask her to show me
but her work is very painterly. When you look at the television and you look at it and you think, this is actually a painter filming her, but it's not. She just has, and she has these layers across it and the layers of fabric on her old hands, and it's so subtle and beautiful work, and we all wish she was here.
Yeah.
And we're going to rectify it as quick as we can.
There's definitely an artist at work in terms of painter. She, because she was a painter and maybe a sculpture first, but then she decided to go for painting. And even when you look at her painting, you can see the layering and the different layers. And it's in editing, and it is the editing who will make that layering and that painting, and each frame is a painting in Barbara's work, and so it's very influenced from her past, what she did before, and then she collaborates with music, what this makes it so interesting to have that collaboration. And I realized that what I didn't know, that she was a jazz musician and she played with a jazz group for 1 year. But she made a decision that art is more what she likes to do. And, but that knowledge is coming in now after years and years working in painting. Now, being in her 80s, she's using music and digital media, new media form.
That speaks really well to something that you were talking about in the film, Patricia, which is that idea of going back to these notebooks, almost like a bank of material, you know.
Well, we've called, was it Catherine, you decided to call what we're doing child's play.
Yes.
And I was really pleased to hear Roseanne saying that in her interview, that child's play, we should be tapping into all that stuff that we grew out of, unfortunately. Shed it like a skin and forgot the innocence and the creativity of young people. So how lucky if we can get there again. How lucky.
Yeah, I was, sorry for interrupting.
No.
I was looking at something Germaine Greer wrote. Now, Germaine Greer, of course, was the feminist who started us all off, but she's also had very controversial positions on rape and stuff in recent years that I certainly wouldn't agree with. But she's talking about the 3 ages of women, right? She says the first age of women is before you start to develop, before puberty, before periods and all of that. And then the next one stretches from there right up to when you hit the menopause and you no longer are that kind of sexual object that is productive and so on. The rest, though, is the third age, post-menopause, which brings you right back to the first phase when you rediscover the person you were before you became that sexual object. And I think that's really interesting when you talk about the notebooks, or when you talk about Barbara going back to her earlier jazz performance days and reviving all of that. I think that's really interesting, and we need to start looking at it, actually, see where it might take us.
We do.
Don't we?
I suppose it's maybe where I was kind of coming from with the conversation with Maria and the childhood, and how Maria was talking about her observation of light being such a major, that it started then, and somehow you succeeded not to lose it or be uneducated out of it, which is, of course, this is another of my big bugbears, is how we educate children today, and how we educate them out of systems or out of ways of thinking into this industrial mode of, going to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and leaving at 5 o'clock in the day. And, what is that about? And you have all been somehow part of a rejection of that I'm really intrigued with, and that kind of fight against what people perceived as what you should do. What you should do and how you should do it, and how you should behave and what you should be and what you should look like. And I think that's really, really interesting. And so to go back to childhood and how you observe light, I think is just an amazing idea. I'm really conscious that on the iPad that I have in front of me, I'm not seeing any questions coming in. Have I missed anything? No, I'm okay. But if anybody actually does have any questions, please do put them in the chat, and I'll hopefully see them through the wonders of technology and the internet. And even for specific questions for somebody in particular, please do. But yeah, so.
I'd like to talk about a childhood, if you like. I come from a baking background, and I found myself in the early days of Kilkenny Design at a party. There were 13 people there, all designers, artists, potters. Every single one of us came from either a milling or a baking background. It was extraordinary realisation. Yeah. Just being around that sort of physical doing and making.
That's amazing. It's
amazing.
It's the artisan. It is the artisan, I think. I've just been so lucky to have always lived in a farm kind of environment. As I said, I didn't do urban at all. But to the menopause thing, I had an early one because I had a hysterectomy in my 40s, and the surgeon couldn't believe. I was elated, I was dancing, I was thrilled. I said, I've regained my childhood. I was not mourning this thing. It was like the great anchor, and it was this incredible elation and relief I had. Which was quite, anyway, it stood by me. I'm still feeling like, I've got my childhood.
Great.
That's amazing.
Gertie, is it finished?
No, we're still going. I was thinking it might be time maybe to wrap up. I don't know how anybody else feels.
I just wanted to say something.
Yes, please.
About her work and the way she works and her country. And I can absolutely see Holland in it. And I remember the Netherlands, I suppose I should say. I remember as a student, we were brought over with an Irish architect to go and look at the architecture and wonderful stuff over there. But we were on a train journey, and I couldn't get over the rows of trees in perfect order. And everybody's back garden, there was cabbage patches, and you'd have to use a tape measure between those cabbage plants. It was like the hedges, and there was symmetry everywhere, and even in the houses. And would you agree? Or am I exaggerating?
No, but they put some crinkly road. Diagonal bended roads. Yeah, in the polder I come from, and my youngest brother went to a newer part, and I was so disgusted. They were crinkly, winding roads. And it reminds me of the style group, with Mondrian and Bart van Lek and van Doesburg. And they were almost religious about the balance, the lines in the composition, because this is a very serious thought process. But then one used a diagonal line, and he was thrown out.
Have you ever met an Irish artist that does this? Although I think I keep it for one as I say it. But it's not really an Irish way. Even yours is very symmetrical, Helen, but you attack it. You attack it.
Yes.
You go in like a warrior. And I never understand how it gets to be like this and this. It's amazing.
Have you been in Helen's studio? I think a warrior is a good way to put it. My youngest daughter, was it Robin?
Yes.
So who's 7, I think she was 6 at the time, went into Helen's studio last summer and said, this mess didn't happen in one day.
No. It was better than that. Because the 2 girls came in, and they looked around and they said, wow. And I was all shocked, and I thought, which painting did this thing wire about? They just said, the mess.
You must have loved the scenes that Terry was showing you mixing the paints.
Yeah.
And it made my mouth water, and you have loads of fans ringing in. Definitely, it's lovely.
Amazing.
We're so different, aren't we? Every single one of us.
This is it.
Yeah.
It's I think that's for me one of the really extraordinary things, and as I look around, particularly at the series of prints over here, how so different. You couldn't be more different. There's no mistaking each other's work for each other. You're not becoming one another. You're so far from imitating. That is amazing, and I feel that for me that must come from an extreme kind of confidence in yourselves and your process that is so inspiring. And for me, what's also so inspiring is how you speak about the uncertainty and the vulnerability you feel in the studio in front of that blank page, or even through the process and all those fears. And I'm looking at you going, the work is so confident, and you're so solid in yourselves. And for me, I'm seeing this as the most positive and inspiring thing about you're talking about aging and being in your 70s.
I think that one of the conversations was you're in the studio and it's not going well, and you think, you despair, and I think having gone through that so many times that it's going to come out, it's going to happen, and that is the confidence. I think it's just the experience of knowing that you're going to battle this. Sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't always.
You have it buried.
Then you try it again.
You wait a while and you put your piece to sleep for a couple of years and then you go back to it, or
Absolutely. And we were all beginners here, or not just beginners. Some of us maybe did it 40 years ago. But, it's really, you could say that this isn't something that we do a lot of. So I'm amazed at it as well. We were all very nervous, and we had to visit, well, some of you are lucky enough to visit Suzanne's studio. But the rest of us were just Zooming with her and trying to find out, what the hell do I do? How do I do this? So
but I think that's where it's the group so important, that kind of maybe insecurity for a while in work, because we are together, because we can talk to each other, because we allow each other to be what we are. I think it helps to feel confidence and to develop the work as we like to do. And I think that is for me the most important thing, that even we are a group and we need to collaborate and allow ourselves to collaborate, but we also can go into ourselves and be ourselves and take strength from that to make work what you maybe wouldn't have done beforehand.
Is it Barbara who described it in the film as your natural habitat in the studio?
Yeah.
Where you belong. I'm really conscious of time now. We have to wrap up, but I really want to thank everybody in South Tipperary Arts Centre for hosting us, and thank you for allowing me to speak with you about this and be so inspired, and bringing up all those fears all those themes of risk and fears and vulnerability and natural habitats in the studio and processes. And I have to say that every time I post something about you on Facebook, my female friends all react that they want to be you when they grow up, all of them. So you have a massive cult fan club of young female artists who are like, I'm going to be a Cailleacha when we grow up.
So I'm going to give her a clap.
Brilliant. No, thank you.
Thank you very much for turning up today. I know there's a lot of parts of this country that are swimming in sunshine right now, so I appreciate you spending the day with us. I would like to put out a massive thank you to Maeve Lambert, who we were just speaking with, who chaired the afternoon panel, to Roseanne Kenny, who did an amazing speech and opening keynote speech this morning, which I think a lot of us will return to and watch again and again. And also to Grace Wells, who also brought another dimension to the conversations that we wanted to really unpack a little bit here today. A massive thank you to each of the members of the Cailleacha, who we've all grown to love, and we hope we'll get to see them lots more over the coming year. And so we know they'll be exceptionally busy between 4 exhibitions and various other projects, which I'm sure they'll get roped into as a result of the amazing work they've managed to put together. I also want to put out a great big thank you to Emer King, our administrator here and my right-hand person, and also to the production team. If you saw the tech behind the scenes here, there's multiple cameras, multiple screens, and meters of cable. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Colin Everett, to Alan McCormack, and to Owen Barry, who are behind the scenes here, making sure that everything works smoothly. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thank you so much for joining us.